everybody? Welcome to another video. Hope y'all are doing well. We have football back, so I know everybody's a little bit more happy at least. But nevertheless, joining me today, as you can see, Mr. Justin Harold, Mr. Jeffrey Santa, guys from the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. Be sure to go check them out. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, we're doing good. We love talking football with you, Derek. So we haven't done this in a while, so we're glad to hop back on.
I know it's been a long time. So basically, why I wanted to bring you guys on today, I know we've talked about it for the viewers at home. You guys did a video series talking about Baker Mayfield's contract and digging into some of that. So we have a few things here to talk about today. Like we talked about, only have like 30 minutes here. So we'll get into as much as we can. But be sure to go check their video out first. I watched the entire thing. I thought they did a great job breaking it down. Some very interesting points on both sides. So we're going to get into it here. So Baker Mayfield, QB1, Browns got a contract to give him. Go ahead and give your brief kind of like rundown of what you guys said, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, me and Jeff have definitely, I think, exhausted this conversation between us two on our side of the YouTube channel. But, we have differing viewpoints. I think you could call me the Baker believer and Jeff a little bit more of the skeptic when it comes to talking about this whole conversation. So we essentially, talked about why we thought the deal should get done or shouldn't get done. I had my point of view, which was obviously trying to make the argument for just getting the deal done now, whereas Jeff wants to do a little bit of a waiting game with Baker and kind of just wait for this season to play out and see how he does. Jeff, do you want to fill it in from there?
Right. I think the baseline is that it's just so multifactorial, and that's really why there's so much conversation and talking points around it. Whether you're discussing Baker's play, whether you're discussing the composition of the roster surrounding him, you have to take into account that the salary cap is going up. You have to take into account that there's a full extra game, a full 4 quarters, which may or may not even be played by a guy like Baker. Let's knock on wood that potentially we won't even need that game. So that could go either way. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of different things that you have to take into account when it comes to, should we give a guy a 5-6 year extension, as you saw with the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen?
Yeah. And Justin, what you just mentioned there, I believe it was you who just mentioned with Josh Allen, or no, I'm sorry, Jeffrey, you just said it. Going crazy. This all started because Josh Allen received a 6-year, $258 million contract. 150 of that's guaranteed. That's putting him at 43 per year. The discussion here is really, I don't think, honestly, it's not, is Baker going to get paid? Because I think if all three of us were hooked up to a lie detector, yes or no, it's on the line. Is he getting paid? I think we all say yes. Am I correct there?
Yeah, I'd say that's correct. Although I think, to put it in a term that simply isn't fair, just because I think what Jeff was getting at in our videos was just, the money factor. I don't think that Jeff has a problem with, signing Baker. I think it's just more about the money, which you were getting at with the $43 million a year. But I think Jeff would say yes, but I won't speak for him.
Yeah, I would definitely lean toward yes, just because I think that there's a chance that I would think that we overpay him before letting him walk. So I would lean toward yes in my argument.
Yeah, which is what I think. I think everybody kind of believes that in a sense. I think we don't fully know all that Baker is or what he can be, but I think everybody right now, if you said, "Hey, do you want this guy to stick around?" I think most people would say yes. So it's not really the discussion of should we keep him. It's what should we keep him at. And this is the discussion I wanted to have with you guys after your guys' discussion on your channel. When you look at these dominoes with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Baker, obviously the domino with Josh has fallen. That was the first one. I was of the belief, and I know Justin, I believe you were as well. I thought the Browns really should have jumped the gun. I know it would have been ballsy, but I thought they should have got this deal done first, because then later, when Josh Allen gets paid 43, and let's just say, hypothetically, I'm not saying this is what Baker will get, but we'll just throw this number out. Let's say the Browns gave him a $37 or $38 million deal for 5 or 6 years. And then later on, we see Josh Allen, and then we go, okay, I feel a little bit better there. In my opinion, now that the domino has fallen in Buffalo first, I think this is putting the Browns in a really bad situation because I don't think the contract's coming this season. When it comes to Lamar Jackson, it's different. Yes, he has the MVP, but hypothetically, postseason, him and Baker have the same exact resume, and Lamar has been there a little bit more, but still, when you look at playoff wins, they're the same. Now, I think Lamar, and you guys can tell me your thoughts on this, I think Lamar's going to get a 3 to 4 year deal, and I think it's going to be 40 something. Could that be upper 40s? Could that be higher than Josh Allen on a shorter deal? Maybe. They're working that out now. I know there's been a lot of debate there, but what do you guys think as far as the way these dominoes have fallen in relation to how that's going to affect Baker? And what do you think Lamar's looking at?
Well, I'll just leave this one to Jeff because Jeff said it perfectly in our video that he thinks the same thing that you're kind of going on with the shorter deal and more money.
Yeah, most definitely. I think Lamar could even really scrape maybe even 50 million. I think 3 years, 150. Wow. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be truthfully. Here's the thing, because it sounds weird because Lamar Jackson is the MVP, but I would rather be the Browns. And obviously I'm very biased, but I feel like if I was a neutral fan, if you're a neutral fan looking at this situation, I would still rather be the Browns because you have that closer to traditional mold quarterback. You don't really know anything about Lamar Jackson, and him being the first guy that has been able to pull off successfully and with immense health. He's been the first guy, since Mike Vick to do that. Everybody thinks of the Robert Griffin III situation. We were very, we knew about that ourselves. So it's very tough to pay and structure a deal with Lamar Jackson. But as far as the Josh Allen deal goes, I think that is definitely closer, compared to the Baker situation, just because of the style of play. But also in the same time, Josh Allen gets a big bump statistically using his legs, more than Baker.
Justin, You got anything on Lamar?
Not that I want to add. Honestly, what Jeff said makes the most sense just with how he plays. I think the Ravens would be scared to, sign him long term. And I think what Lamar is going to end up wanting in his contract is that guaranteed money, just like a lot of people do. But obviously for his playing style, he's got to know himself that he plays a reckless game and that unless he significantly changes it, which he won't, because he plays to his strength, obviously. He's going to want guaranteed money just in case something does happen, like a RG3 or anything else like that. So,
yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, honestly, out of these three, Lamar is probably the toughest, in my opinion, just because you got to balance that line of, hey, we know how talented he is. Obviously, he is one of the best players in the NFL. It's just the quarterback position and how do you balance Lamar's athleticism versus, hey, actual quarterback play? As far as the Baker and Josh Allen comparison, I think it's a little bit interesting because everybody looks at the 2018 draft. And, my biggest takeaway from that draft is it wasn't a situation where everybody had the number one pick nailed. The next year you had Kyler Murray, you had Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. You knew these guys were going to be number one overall picks. Even going back to Myles Garrett with us the year prior, you knew who it was going to be. With Baker, I think there's a just hatred because, obviously it's the same way with everybody. Nobody wants to be wrong, and that's not to say you can't admit it when you are, but you still aren't going to be happy to be wrong. With Baker, I think everybody had Sam Darnold listed as that number one guy. And when it turned out not to be, people's expectations went through the roof for Baker. If he's not this, then he's going to be a failure. And everybody wants to hate on him based on that and him being the number one overall pick. With Baker's career so far, comparing to Josh Allen, yeah, we knew Josh maybe had a higher ceiling than Baker, but there were legitimate concerns there. So far, Baker has 5 less career wins than Josh Allen, 14,000 more yards, 8 more TDs. And honestly, I think in this past season, I think it was a limited offense. I think with the whole offseason and everything, they just were not in a position to truly open things up. PFF had Baker listed as the 6th best passer in 2020. And that there's a lot of context that needs to go into that. But when you look at Josh Allen and Baker, do you guys think there is this big I guess, gap between the two of them, like some of the media are acting there is?
I'll let Jeff take that first.
So, as far as the big gap, and I do agree with your argument as far as the offseason, but at the same time, you could look at the Buffalo Bills situation and say Josh Allen doesn't have the number one, running back duo in the league to lean on. Of course, he gets a boost from his defense because we all know that their defense was significantly better than the Browns last year, resulting in them, making it a little bit further in their season. But I could almost reverse that argument around and saying, Josh Allen versus Baker Mayfield. Baker wasn't opened up as much, but you're basically relying on Josh Allen to get the job done and throw 40 to 50 times, which also most likely inflates the stats. But between, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, that's not really, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, of course. But as far as a gap, talent-wise, I think if you take it from a quarterback standpoint, like I said, Josh Allen better with the legs, a little bit more mobile, a little bit more of the, typical build. I think he's got a little bit more height. Talent-wise, I think they're very close. I think that Baker Mayfield is someone, which I hate to use the Colin Cowherd argument because Colin Cowherd says it's nothing about talent. But when I tell you I saw Baker Mayfield beat Ohio State live in person at the Shoe, I know that the talent's there. I've always thought that the talent was there. I think decision-making and I think how he conducts an offense, which it's two different roles, but I think Baker Mayfield's decision-making might be lacking a little bit, but talent-wise, I think it's definitely closer than, people that put out top 5 quarterback rankings and Josh Allen, is 3 or 4 in some of them just because he got paid. I think that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, and I liked everything that Jeff just said there. Honestly, it's really hard to be like talent-wise, like make the argument because then you got to go and you got to have like the eye test. And for a lot of people, it doesn't just like come off to people like what certain guys do a lot better than others. Like everyone loves to talk about how Aaron Rodgers is just like the best quarterback at drawing the defense off sides and then throwing a Hail Mary for a touchdown on a play that, just doesn't matter. For me, like you watch Baker's game, Baker does a lot of things I think better than top 5 or top 10 quarterbacks do. His ball to the sideline is possibly the best thing that I've ever seen like a quarterback do. And he does really well when he rolls out of the pocket and does those sideline throws. With Josh Allen, I don't like, I've watched his games and he's got a cannon. He can launch the ball, but like almost every quarterback you want to list off, Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, they all do that. It's to try to make an argument for talent's sake, it's really, really hard. And I'll just stick to what Jeff says. I think it's really close. I think a lot of people outside of these towns, outside of Cleveland and outside of Buffalo would say that Josh Allen does. And I think they would just be looking at stats and basing it off of that. But, Josh Allen has just been asked to do more in his past 2 seasons than Baker Mayfield has in terms of throwing the ball. And so, I think it's really interesting just getting back to the main point of this conversation about, getting to pay these guys. We saw Josh Allen hit what I think is his pinnacle. That is probably the best season that we will see out of Josh Allen. That's a MVP caliber season right behind Aaron Rodgers. But then we've seen, the lowest point for Baker Mayfield in his sophomore season. We know what Baker Mayfield's floor is, and it's bad.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've seen anything close to his ceiling yet, which is, Jeff can make a great argument for we should wait for him to have that season. But I just don't know that in the Kevin Stefanski offense that he's ever going to be asked to hit that ceiling. So it's really an interesting conversation to have about these two and how their careers will go down. But for right now, I'm just going to keep it to what Jeff said. It's very close, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out from here on out.
Okay, yeah, and that's the interesting point here is what is Baker Mayfield's ceiling? Obviously, like I talked about, being the number 1 overall pick, there is that expectation that you will be great. Not that you're going to be good or you're going to be solid. You will be great because that's what the number 1 overall pick means. My thing here is, and I've been heavily criticized, and I feel free if you guys want to call me an idiot, I don't care. I think next year, if the Browns wait, which I think they will, I think by this point, if he's not been paid, I don't think he will. I really think it is realistic to see Baker Mayfield getting close to 45 million, anywhere between 43 that Josh has up to, 44, somewhere in there. And my reasoning in that, and I'll let you guys go ahead after this, I think based on last year and based on his comfortability, if I can speak English, it's to me, I think you're going to see the very best out of Baker this year. And if you don't, then I think maybe there's something to look at here. Like something's wrong. Where Baker's at right now, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, and Donovan Peoples-Jones are essentially, now that DPJ's made that step, and I think it's very clear to see, especially after that preseason game. Holy crap. He's basically got three guys that you can count on from the wide receiver spot. And obviously he counts on Rashard Higgins too. That's a little bit different, but he's got the receiving talent. The tight end room, David Njoku has improved. I think that's been easy to see. Him and Austin Hooper have worked on their connection. I know Hooper's had some drop problems, but he's still, I think, a very good tight end. This to me is Baker's time because Kevin Stefanski has to evolve this offense. And this has kind of been a discussion I've talked with, by myself with some other people. How is this offense going to evolve? And I think that really comes to play in the deep passing game. I think you're going to see them stretch the field a lot more. And I think that's why they draft guys like Anthony Schwartz, who can at least bring that threat. Not that he's going to be that guy, but at least there's that threat there, kind of like your Antonio Callaway. But Kevin Stefanski, now year two. Baker's comfortable. He's got the weapons. The offensive line is the best it's going to be. There's going to be guys that leave. It's just the reality. I think Baker is primed and ready because you see the accuracy come back. From year one to year two, everybody's like, what the heck? Where's that accuracy? Where's that precision passing that we saw and everybody loved from year one? Year three, rather, after the first few games, get closer to half the year, you start to see that come back. I don't think you're going to see a relapse. And I know, Jeff, this is a point that you were making. What if it does? Which obviously that's always a possibility. You can't just say, well, he's not, because there's any quarterback can't. That's just a reality. But I think based on Baker, where he's at right now mentally, where he's at right now physically, and I think at this point in the offense, what additions they're going to have, I think this will be Baker's best year on the field as well as statistically. And I think he's going to have a Josh Allen type bump. That's why I think he's looking at that contract.
If Jeff doesn't mind if I take it really quickly, I just don't know that, even this year that he's going to take that jump. I think he's going to play better than what he did last year. And I think that you're on to something with how Kevin Stefanski is going to evolve this offense. We only got to see him, have one full season as an offensive coordinator with the Vikings. And we saw similar attempts and completions to what Kirk Cousins had this past year with Baker Mayfield. We know that this is a run heavy team and there are two stud running backs and we have a bunch of tight ends, a lot of blocking tight ends, a fullback and all that kind of stuff. And, even Kevin Stefanski preaches about having his wide receivers block, which we've seen a lot of great stuff from. I'm interested to see how it evolves. Does it evolve into Baker throwing 500 times? Maybe. Is that going to happen in the next season after that? I think that's probably more likely than this upcoming season. But in terms of being able to keep other teams guessing to what we're going to do, people know that Baker Mayfield does a lot of PA boots and, a lot of that is set up by our running. Maybe you do have to take that this season to kind of switch it up and kind of give teams a misleading kind of view and start throwing the ball a lot more and letting Baker kind of open these games up. But for me, it's tough. I just don't know that we'll see it this upcoming season. And the reason why I'm saying that is just because even with Josh Allen having the same coach for 3 years, same head coach, same offensive coordinator, this has always been one of my biggest conversations. It's just, the situations that these quarterbacks come into. Josh Allen was very blessed to have head coach, OC, be all three the same in his first year. I'm not going to count it because he didn't play that much. But his second season, starter for all these games, but he doesn't have a great season. He hardly throws for I had the stats pulled up here. He hardly throws for 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, not bad, and only 3,000 yards. I mean, that's his year 2, which is what we're looking at with Baker going into this next year in terms of just offensive coordinator and head coach being the same, offensive play calling being the same. So maybe we don't see that huge jump like Josh Allen did second year, but into his third year.
Here, all right. So here's why here's why I'm happy from my standpoint that Josh Allen got paid first and that we're maybe not going to pay Baker this offseason. Now it sounds bad to say, but we've basically forced Baker into exceeding 2 separate metrics in order for him to dictate and have leverage in contract talks. He's going to have to play better than he did last year, and he's going to have to play better than Josh Allen plays this year, I think, if he wants to ask for that $43 million a year, which if he does both of those things, I'll pay him that and I'll pay him more. That's really how I come at it from both sides of the spectrum. As far as the running game and where I'm going to lean toward Derek a little bit on what you guys started off talking about. I think last year, between everything that was going on, I think the slow start, I think you don't have an off season, you have the Zoom off season or whatever. And, the first 8 weeks, and then you lose OBJ. Okay. I think last year our schedule allowed us to run more. Like, I think we're going to be closer to 50-50. You played everybody in the NFC East last year. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt basically beat those teams by themselves. Yeah. This year, week 1, you're going to have to throw with Kansas City. You're going to have to throw with the Chargers week 5. You're probably going to have to outthrow Kyler Murray week 6. You're not going to outrush the Ravens twice, I don't think. So you're going to have to outpass them. And I think that's where we saw last year in the game of the year. I think Lamar Jackson, however weird that game was, Lamar Jackson made one more clutch pass than Baker did coming back from the locker room. So you're going to have to outclutch, Mahomes, Herbert, Murray, Lamar Jackson, maybe twice, and Aaron Rodgers in week, whatever that is, 16 on the road in Lambeau. So we're not going to be able to
Christmas Day.
we're not going to be able to hide behind Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. And it's almost that, that game last year when we played Tennessee, you got the best running back in the league, Derrick Henry. He don't help you when, the Browns blitz you for 35 in the first half or whatever. And then Tannehill couldn't get the job done. Baker out clutched Tannehill at the end of that game, albeit our defense was trash down the stretch, but you guys know what it means. But even that's the other way. If our defense is elite, then we're not going to have to outthrow these people. But I don't think our defense is going to be elite the first 8 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting point. That was actually what I was going to hit on next. So good segue from you, more professional than I am. So with this defense, I think this is another reason, adding to my point that I think Baker's going to take a big jump. And I see what you're saying, Justin. I just think because of how effective the run game was, you saw some teams come out, Tennessee specifically, and I'm glad you brought that up. They came out and they said, "Hey, Baker, we think you suck. Beat us throwing." Mm-hmm. And he did. And he proved him wrong. And I think that's going to be kind of this, maybe not the same thing, but I think because of the defenses you're going to be playing, quarterbacks you're going to be playing, like you said, you're going to be forced to pass a lot more. But also, I think the defense is going to be Baker's biggest help here, because now you have guys that you can count on as far as the vets like the John Johnsons, Denzel Ward's coming back, Myles Garrett has help. These guys are no longer being forced to just kind of do it themselves. Like, they have some kind of cushion, take some of the pressure off. I think for Baker, that's nice, because then at the same time, he doesn't feel like he's constantly pressured, like I have to make this play or we're screwed, because I think there was a little bit of that last year. I could be wrong, but that's just me based on what I've seen from him. And also, I think from what you just said there, Baker to me he's a guy that doesn't necessarily need the best talent around. Like, I don't think he needs a great line. I think he just needs a solid line. I don't think he needs great receivers. He just needs solid receivers. I think if he has a good run game and a solid tight end that he can count on, he can be really good. That's just going based off of his college career and his year 1 in the NFL for the Browns. So long term, I think based on what you see this season, I think the Browns are going to have to kind of shift how they think about Baker. Maybe, well, actually, the NFL as a whole are going to have to shift how they think about Baker, because the Browns, in my opinion, are going to have to go from using him as kind of a game manager who makes a few key throws to a guy who you're going to have to be able to count on to make big time throws in big time situations. And I think he did that at times this year, but I think that's going to have to be a lot more. What do you think about that?
Real quick, because here's a Kevin Stefanski metric that what you just said triggered in my mind that should trickle down to Baker Mayfield. You would love to see the Kevin Stefanski game plan almost flip in some instances last year, where like I tweeted Justin earlier, he was tweeting about the game of the year. Baker doesn't have a passing touchdown until the fourth quarter of that Ravens game. Instead of leaning on the run game to start, and, Baker having a terrible first half, and then he comes out and he does something historic in the second half, see the Bengals game. Why don't we have a historic start and a fast start from the front in the air like we did in Tennessee, and then manage backwards with the running game and running it down your throat? And now your defense has to, tackle a fresh Kareem Hunt in the fourth quarter. That's a big Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield metric that I would love to flip, where it's like, okay, Baker hasn't made any big throws the whole game, but in the fourth quarter, now we're basically saying, okay, we need this first down, or, let's not give Justin Tucker a kick to end the game. I think if we could flip it and come out blitzing in the air as far as the momentum, the intensity, and then scaling it back and saying, okay, our defense just got us off the field 3 and out. Now we're going to run down the field 10, 11-minute drive in the third or fourth quarter instead of doing that in the first half.
And I think, just to jump in here real quick, I think Kevin Stefanski trusts Baker to do that now. I don't think he trusted him at the beginning of the year, but I think after what he's seen the back half, I think he knows who he is more, and I feel like he thinks he can trust him.
Yeah, I really like watching the building the Browns stuff, because it kind of lets you into how smart some of these guys are at the coaches, the players, and everything. And on this latest one, Jarvis Landry is talking to, O'Shea, the wide receivers coach, and informing him about something that Baker said. And he's like, play it back for me. Like, what do you see? And he comes over, talks to him, and he's like, Baker, you know stuff about this. Like, you actually know what you're talking about. And it's something that, I think Kevin Stefanski, like you said, has gotten a feel for more with, we, like Jeff said earlier, we had the COVID season. It's a lot of things that were out of place. We play a game without any of our starting wide receivers. We have Zoom meetings. We have guys come in and out of the lineup because of COVID. And it's just really absurd. But to go back to what Jeff was saying, he liked to bust my balls a little bit about that game. That I was like, that's the game that you should watch to be like, that's Baker Mayfield being the franchise quarterback. And obviously, Jeff makes the point about he doesn't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter, but all the touchdowns previous to that are set up by big time Baker throws, which I loved watching that game all over again. I was there in person for it, and it was amazing. But then he goes and he does 3 straight touchdowns from 20 to 34 deficit and just puts on a clinic, which I think, is something we could see more of. But I would agree with Jeff that I would like to start games off like the Tennessee game. But our defense, for all the years that Baker has been here, has let opponents outscore us more than we've outscored them. And that's a team stat that's just awful to look at in terms of it being a negative for all 3 years Baker has been here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just think this defense is going to be a huge change. And just like you said, going back and watching some of those games, Lamar Jackson was throwing ducks to wide open receivers. It wasn't like he was, and this is no diss to Lamar, or no hate to him. This is just the reality. I mean, he was just, guys were running scot-free, and he was just, well, there you go.
Well, even you watch the Kansas City game, and Chad Henne comes in and, ends up throwing not a touchdown, but ends up throwing an interception long. And then he comes back a drive or two later and throws the winning pass to Tyreek Hill, who's just wide open. Like our guys on defense last year, I was telling Jeff in that tweet, I've seen Andrew Sendejo out there on the field last year, and rewatching it and knowing that he's not going to be, it's just such a great relief feeling to have. Yeah. It's so great to just watch those games and be like, yeah, he's not here anymore. Thank God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, It's definitely going to be a big difference. I think even in this preseason game, we'll go ahead and just wrap up quick with this. I'm sorry we're running out of time here. Again, go check them out, the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. I'll be sure to link everything in the description. Hopefully I remember. If I'm good at this, I will. But yeah, with that preseason game, the defense, I think, was the biggest takeaway. Jacksonville starting guys, that's their starters, most of them. And we're out there with our second, third string defense. JOK comes in later on and then just destroys everybody like he's Hulk or something. And it was just incredible to see. So to me, if that's your second team defense and this is the guys you're going to be able to rotate in and out, you can count on guys. You can give Myles Garrett a breather every once in a while. You can give Jadeveon Clowney a breather, John Johnson. When you have guys like Richard LeCounte stepping up in big time situations, that's great to see. And I think for this defense as a whole, the Browns had great turnovers. I forget what the numbers were, but they were one of the best teams when it comes to getting turnovers defensively last year. And sure, that doesn't always translate. But I think now that with the additions we've had, okay, now there's half a second longer for Myles Garrett to get to the quarterback, and everybody talks about Jadeveon Clowney and his sacks. I don't need him to get sacks. I really don't. I just need him to get pressure to give Myles some extra time. I need you to be as good of a run defender as you have been. So I think just kind of wrapping up here, I think what you've seen in that Jags preseason game defensively, I think that's kind of just the bottom level surface of how good this defense can be. What do you guys think about that here?
I just think Joe Woods will finally be able to get to play his defense that he wants to play. I mean, we didn't get to see a lot of it last year because he didn't have a lot of quality DBs, something that I think we went out and we drafted and we got in free agency a lot of. And so now we'll be able to see that. And we got obviously someone that we all love, Choke, who could cover the field very, very well from that linebacker position. We're just going to have a lot of speed. My biggest thing is I hope we stay healthy. I'm knocking on wood right now, but that's the biggest thing is like guys last year, I know something we wanted to talk about, but Denzel Ward, when he would go out of games, our DB play was just awful. And so having a lot of those guys back or getting a lot of good guys now to kind of replace and kind of fill in, I feel a lot more confident in that defense being able to get off their downs.
All the way around the ball in that Jags game, thematically, it looked like that's how the first unit on both sides of the football was going to operate. And the amount of confidence that shows me between Joe Woods and the defense, between Kevin Stefanski and the offense, that's what I like to see the most. It didn't seem like we were doing anything cute. It didn't seem like we had training wheels on. It looked like our first team was out there. And then you scratch your head and you go, our first team's on the bench. That's pretty terrifying. Yeah. I loved it. The Jags, the Jags aren't going to the Super Bowl, hopefully not, I guess, but they're not anybody who's really stellar. So take it with a grain of salt, but everything looked good.
Yeah, definitely a lot of good takeaways. I think that's the big thing here. And I'm excited for this joint practice with the Giants. Hopefully Baker's not under a pile getting beat up. But it is the Giants, and that's to be expected. So Freddie Kitchens returns. Hopefully he leaves. Wouldn't be surprised if he tries to stick around. But nevertheless, thank you guys again for coming on, rather. You guys got anything else you want to say here wrapping up?
No, thanks for having us.
Yep.
Thanks for having us there.
As always, like I said, go check them out. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you have criticism, I can take it. They can take it. Cry in the comments. I don't care. Just appreciate you guys' feedback. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. So anyway, let me know your thoughts and we will see you in the next video.